Have you ever met someone from the mafia? I once knew of a guy whom I could call whenever I needed or wanted something. One phone call, and he'd come running. Why was this courtesy extended to me? I took care of his dying wife, and he appreciated the things I did that went beyond what any other nurse or family member had done for her on her final days on Earth. He felt indebted to me for this. I felt I was just doing what any compassionate caregiver would do. This was some 30 years ago, and I had no idea who this man was other than a grieving husband whose wife was under my care. I learned of his nefarious activities about 3 years ago. I had long forgotten about the generous offer he made me or really who he was until waiting in line at the bank one day. I remember standing in a long line, waiting for my turn to make a deposit. While waiting, I noticed the cutest little girl behind me who seemed bored. She began tugging on the brightly colored lanyard with my truck keys on it that stuck out of the back pocket of my shorts. My keys eventually fell out onto the tile floor and made quite the noise. The little girl was startled by the clatter and started crying. The man who was looking after her picked her up and gently chastised her for tugging on my keys. This did not calm her down. I turned around, looked the man in the eyes, and asked if it would be okay if I could hold her while we waited. I also said her playing with the lanyard didn't bother me because I have children. Adults have a hard time waiting in long lines at the bank. Think about how it would be for kids. The man quietly mumbled something as he passed the toddler into my outstretched arms. She began quieting down while I asked her questions. I asked her to point to a light, a door, a pen, or anything else to distract her. I was facing forward, with a man behind me. I then felt a tap on my shoulder and heard him say something to the effect of why I had not called him all these years. I twirled around, hugging the toddler, and asked him to repeat his question. He did. However, I was still at a loss. I did not recognize him or his voice, and I thought he mistook me for someone else. He then said, "Mindy, don't you remember who I am? You must be doing well, or you would have called and taken me up on my offer." At this point, I was even more confused. He obviously knew me, as he called me by my nickname, which not many know. I often run into former patients that I assisted in their labor and delivery, and I figure he was the husband of one of them. However, I would only give out my nickname to a very few of my patients, the ones that I had in my care for longer periods of time and usually in health crises. His face suddenly softened, and I could see sadness creeping in his eyes. Yet I could not place him. He then proceeded to say how we had met and how much he was still grateful to me. It was then that I remembered who he was. I gave him a big hug and explained that I did not know what he meant by telling me to call him should I need anything. I further explained that I was capable of doing whatever by myself, and did not want to bother him or anyone else to get things done. At that point, it was my turn to go up to the teller's window, and I handed him back his little girl. He handed me a fancy-looking business card and again repeated his offer of help. He hugged me quite tightly and then made his way to another teller. His transaction was faster than mine, as he was headed to the exit before me. He was pushing the door open when he looked back at me and said not to forget his offer. Once the door closed, I shrugged my shoulders and smiled at the teller before me. It was then that I noticed her mouth was wide open. She could have used my help to pick her jaw back into place. When the teller composed herself, she quietly spoke under her breath, asking me how I knew this man. I said, "Oh, I took care of his wife many years ago." She then asked if I knew who he really was, to which I replied, "Yes. He is the husband of one of my patients that I took care of many years ago." By this time, the bank manager had made her way over to us and quietly informed me that he may have been my patient's husband, but he was also known to be the leader of a local mafia. Not a man to fool with. I still have not made that one phone call. However, unknown to me, I did run into a very, very dangerous man, and he was very nice to me. And his offer of help is open to me to this day.